if you've been wanting to start painting but you didn't know where to start, you need a painting that's easy to start with, I've got one for you. This one right here is like 4 colors, 5 brushes. It's going to take you a couple of hours. Join in, I'll show you every step you need to do. Very first painting. On the palette today, I just have 3 colors. Burnt Umber, Ultramarine Blue, Cadmium Yellow Light, and then White Gesso. We're going to stick to just these 3. We're going to keep this painting as simple as possible. Start with, wet my brush. I'm just going to go in with some of this Ultramarine Blue and Gesso. And we're going to coat the canvas with a little bit of my Burnt Umber in there as well. And get this kind of bluish gray color to start with. And I just want to coat the whole canvas. A little bit more towards blue. Trying to coat the whole canvas with this. Alright, I just want to make sure to do it quickly, cover the whole canvas. I want to make sure I've worked that paint down into the canvas really well. There's not a lot of water in this, it's just what was in my brush. And I probably want to go ahead and do 2 coats. At this point, the color is not super important. Just want some kind of a mid to light blue. It doesn't matter if I have brush strokes. Just kind of getting some paint on the canvas. I'm going to hit this with the blow dryer, and then I'm going to put a second coat on it. Alright, I'm probably going to only use 4 or 5 brushes for this whole painting. That first coat, I just used a 1.5 inch flat brush. You can do that with anything really. For this next step, I'm going to use my synthetic fan brush. This is a soft bristle synthetic brush. And I'm going to make a color that is just a shade darker in value than this sky that I just had. I'm going to keep it blue, blue-gray. And that's too dark. Get some of that gesso. And I just want it to be just barely darker than the sky. And I'm going to do a few steps of this. So each time I'm going to go a little bit more of this dark color in, go a little darker each step. I won't show you the mixing of each one, but it's the same thing, just a little darker. All right, so when that brush has paint on it, I want to make sure that those bristles separate like that. And I'm going to just use the corner of it. And I don't have a sketch or anything for this painting. I'm just going to start in the back and work forward and see what I end up with. But I want some trees way off in the distance, so I'm going to make these just barely darker than the sky. Okay, and I'm just using the tips of this brush, just kind of using the tips and just kind of tapping to create a little bit of a tree texture. If your brush is not separating enough like this, put a little more water in the paint. And I want to go down kind of both sides of this. Canvas. Kind of lean these in towards the middle of the canvas. And I want them to almost, just disappear. You can barely see that. I'm not going to come all the way down, probably 2/3 of the way down. Left side, same thing. Try not to let my hand get in the way of the camera too much, but really no avoiding that. All right. At the top, they can almost come together on this first layer. And just tapping that brush, just mostly using the tips. And then as I get out here where I want it to be a little more solid, I can kind of lay the brush down and do it. But I don't really want it solid. I want to leave those holes in there. Okay. A little more of that. All right, and while this is still wet, this is a trick you can do. While it's still wet, I'm going to take a palette knife. You could also use the back end of the brush, whatever you have. And I just want to scratch a little in here. It's not going to show up much. This will just look like some limbs, sticks. Just a little. It's not going to show up a whole lot. But when it does, it'll look like some detail. All right. And while it's still wet, I'm going to come back with a liner brush. And this one, This one is a number 1. I'll be using a smaller one later as well, but if all you have is just a few brushes, one of these is liner brushes, one of the most important brushes you can get. I'm going to go back in with that same color, but just maybe a slight bit darker again. And I'm going to add some tree trunks to this. And these are trees way, way, way off in the distance. And I'm going to add some trees in here. Just a few. A lot of water. And I'm just going to throw these on top again. That paint's still wet. That's okay. Got to do this in a hurry. See how that does? Just a few little streaks up and down. I'm not worried about, limbs on them, just the up and down streaks for now. Okay. A little bit of that. Now the goal here is this is far away, but I want to bring this closer and closer. So I'm going to go a layer at a time, each step getting a little bit darker and a little bit further out and a little bit further out until that kind of vignettes down into this valley. What I'm going to end up with is a sort of a dry creek bed valley here. So let me go back with another mixture of that darker blue and that same fan brush, but I think I'm going to dry this first. Let me go ahead and hit it with the blow dryer. All right, I've got a little bit of a darker blue. Same exact thing, just another step of it. And I'm not going to come all the way in this time. I'm going to come in about here. And I'm kind of focusing on these edges, the tips of these, limbs sticking out here, trying to make those have a little character to them. But once I get deep into where the tree is thicker, then I just kind of lay it down and kind of rub the paint around. It doesn't have to be beautiful back there. Just want to leave a few holes in it. Each step of the way here, I'm just going to pull back, a couple inches off of what was there before and repeat the same exact process. I'm going to throw it in there, do some scratching. Now, these will show up better on the darker paint. They didn't show up much on the first layers. We want to do that while the paint's wet, of course. And make sure you go off the top of the canvas. This is, you don't want it to stop right at the edge. And being careful not to cover up all my previous layer. Okay. Again, I'll get back here off of the front edge of it. It can kind of blend together a little more because that's going to be covered up by another layer. And come on down just a little on this further layer. Probably going to cover a lot of this up at the bottom, but I'll go ahead and put it in. Won't hurt anything. I want to make sure I go off the top of the canvas and off the, when I get to the sides, I want to go off the edge of the canvas. You don't want to let the edge of the canvas be your, you don't want to stop at the edge. It looks weird. You want to keep going. All right, same as before. Got that same color, just a slight bit darker. And I'll put some of these tree trunks in here. And then each step of the way, they're going to get a little bigger, but never really all that big. Not yet. Keeping them in my dark section here. I don't want to put any out over the middle part. Doesn't matter if they're perfect. Most of it's going to be covered up. Again, no limbs, just straight up and down lines. All right, there's 2 steps of this. Next step, same thing. I'm going to dry it first. Let me do that real quick. All right, for this third layer, I've got the color a little darker again. This time I put just a tiny amount of the yellow in it. You can't even really tell. It just kind of looks gray at this point. But as I add more yellow, it's going to get more green. And I'm going to take my time a little more on this next step and kind of make sure I get some good limbs sticking out here. And the brush is going to do all the work for you. If it's separated good like that and you're just tapping, the ends of the brush will do that for you. You can kind of, as long as you keep it kind of perpendicular to to the canvas. You don't want to be up or down. You just kind of want to be straight in. And I kind of use like almost a smile back and forth. You can let those limbs kind of go upward at the tip. I'm tapping and just kind of swinging it back and forth. See what kind of texture that creates. Not really thinking about an individual tree, just the edge, the shape of the edge of those limbs, how they stick out there. I don't want there to be a straight down line. I want to make sure I have some that stick way out and some that kind of don't go very far. It's okay if your paint's not exactly the same color and consistency all the way down. They're trees, right? As I get back further away from the edge, I can lay the brush down a little more and just kind of fill in that area, but leaving the texture. Like before, I'm going to kind of scratch in some of these. And these are more the horizontal limbs I'm scratching in. The vertical tree trunks I'm going to paint in. But like I said, these don't show up a whole lot, but if they do, it looks really good. All right, same thing on the other side. I'm going to try to get, kind of tap the canvas there, but it won't matter. I'm going to paint over that. The key to making this work is make sure your brush is working for you. If you got a brand new fan brush, sometimes it wants to just, the bristles want to just go straight across and they don't want to separate. You got to really, sometimes you got to beat that brush up a little bit to make it act right. Kind of grind it into the canvas a little and make it open up. You get a good old brush that you've used for a long time, it seems to work better. These are not expensive brushes though. This is cheap craft store. I think I got these at Hobby Lobby for like $2. This is not something you got to spend a lot of money on. Ooh, got some white paint in there I didn't want. It's okay. All right. See how that's already creating that depth in the middle there. Don't want to think about this too much. Just kind of want to do it. All right. And like before, using my liner, brush, and a slightly darker version of that color. I got a little too much yellow in it that time. Slightly darker version. Throw some trunks in here. Now those are kind of leaning away. I don't really like that much. I'd rather them kind of either be straight or even leaning in, especially in the middle there. I'd rather have some that kind of lean inward. But the most important thing is that they get thicker at the bottom, not at the top. Yeah, if they get, as long as they're small as they go up, that'll be covered mostly by the next layer. But they have to be small at the top. Doing this while it's wet, the paint underneath kind of pushes around too, and it helps to give you what you're looking for. Okay, I'm going to blow dry that, and then we'll do a fourth and final layer of it. All right, this time I've got a lot more of the yellow in there, and I'm only really going to focus on this right side for now, because I want these trees to be a little further back than the left. I want to have some foreground stuff on the left side. So this kind of is my green. It's about as far forward as I'm going to come on this right side. So I want to make sure I go all the way off the canvas with this. Pull some of these out into here, but mostly keeping them back that way. And I may have to do a second layer of this over on the right where it's thin, where the lighter canvas is showing through, but that's okay. I got to make a decision about where I want my ground to be here in a minute, but for now I'm just putting some stuff in the back. Matter of fact, I'm going to dry this really quick so I do a second layer. But before I do, I'll go ahead and scratch a little on it. Every little bit helps at this point. Yeah, it's just fun to do anyway. Makes a fun sound. All right, I'm going to dry that and do it again. Okay, that's dry, and I'm just going to come and do another layer of it. I don't want to go all the way out to the edge this time. I'm going to keep it a little more at the heart of it. Get it pretty solid over here on the right. Yeah, that's looking good. Now see, we haven't done anything yet that takes any extraordinary skill or any kind of, this is all just basically a technique. Anybody can do this. This is just, I mean, obviously the more times you've done it, you're going to get better at it. The first ones may not look exactly like this, but the more trees you do, the more they're going to look like trees. And but there's nothing hard about this. Anybody can learn how to do this. It's so far been this brush. And again, scratching this. Not showing up as good this time because that green is underneath it, but all right. And then we go darker. Just a little. And I say all the time, if you've watched these videos, you get tired of hearing it, but the color is not nearly as important as the value, the darkness of it. So that's when I say, you know, a shade darker, you know, make sure you're darker. Make sure you're not, you know, the next step can't be lighter. It's going to throw everything off if it's not a little darker. The color will take care of itself. That's one reason we use the just a few colors to start with. As long as I make all of my colors out of those basic three, I mean, they're pretty much all going to match each other. I'm going to run these two together here at the bottom. Let this get a little bit bigger. I'm going to have, on the left side here, I want to have this come a lot closer. I'm going to have a couple of really big trees. But for now, I think I'm going to stop there with this right side. Make sure I get some good dark down here at the bottom, because I don't know where not sure where I'm going to put my the land here that's going to sit on. Got to make a decision here soon. All right, I'm going to dry that and darken this up just a little bit more, just another layer of that same color, just to make it a little more solid on that far right. All right, just a little more over here. And another thing about mixing these colors, and that intimidates some people starting out, is to try to mix your colors. But when you do that, you know, like I said, it makes them all match each other. But also it keeps you from getting those wild, you know, it's natural for people to want to use. You think the grass is green, the trees are green, I'm going to grab a tube of green paint, just start painting green. Green will look really weird if it's too pretty. This kind of keeps your greens ugly, and that's a good thing. If your green gets too pretty too quick, if it's too bright and too green, it's going to look like a cartoon. All right, so that right side I'm pretty much done with for now. I'll show you some colors here that we're going to use. Okay, I'm going to start putting in some of this land, and like I said, this is going to be kind of a dry creek bed. But my base color is going to be some of the same blue. I'm just using just a flat brush. There's a 1/2 inch flat brush. That base color is going to be this blue, but where we were adding yellow to it to make it lean towards green with the trees, for the ground, I'm going to add more brown to it and let it lean back towards, you know, brown to a more earth tone as we go down. Now, it'll get a little gesso that lets it kind of be tan, and also having a little gesso helps it kind of cover better. But as it comes down towards the foreground, I want it to be more brown. Now that brown, if you add a little blue to it, gets a little more gray. So it's kind of a blue-gray. Again, not a pretty color, not brown straight out of a tube. You'll never hardly ever see me use paint just straight out of the tube the color that it is, because it's just too vivid, too bright, and it's hard to control. So starting here, and I think I've got kind of 3 shades. I've got the bluish color, and then coming down to the lighter that has some blue mixed in it, and then the darker brown. Things that are further away are going to be more blue, because if that's your atmosphere color. So that's why I'm starting with this one. Let's start with this one right here. And I just got to make a decision, and just got to kind of look at the painting at this point and see what it gives you. This is a good part about not having a sketch. You can kind of go with what you see. Now, I know that I wanted my horizon, or my furthest away point, to be able to see to be about 1/3 of the way up the canvas, which is kind of right in here. So I'm going to let my land kind of fall right there for now. And I don't want to paint a path kind of straight down. That's going to look weird. You always want it to kind of snake around. So I want this to be, you know, it's off in the distance here. Like I said, this is a kind of a creek bed, but there's not a lot of water in it. I'm going to keep my brush flat and work forward and just kind of see where that land needs to be. I don't care that I'm painting over this. It's going to cover some of that up, but then it's going to come around in front of that as well. Like I said, on the left side, I want to have some big foreground stuff, so all that's going to be covered up, but I'll go ahead and let my path go that way. As I come down, we'll switch to the darker paint, a little more brownish color. Let that kind of go. Now I want all my brush strokes to be horizontal. All right. If they're going to show, I want them horizontal. And as I get to the foreground, that's where I want it the darkest. I'll add a little more blue to that and get this a little darker up front here. Yeah. Darker in the foreground makes it give you depth. So we're standing here looking down this creek bed, and we're going to have some deer way off in the distance there. Looking at it now, I think I want to go back with a little more blue further up. Maybe let it come from even further. Go even more blue. Yeah. Let's let it come from further up. And let that blue kind of come down and mix with this in general. Keep the brush strokes flat. Okay. Just water. And I think I'm just going to take this and just kind of make it disappear out here with water. I want it to kind of go up. Yeah, I'd like for it to be with a little more texture. You know, the water's going to sit down in a valley, so I'm going to add a little bit of that downward. Yes, how the banks kind of come down into it. We're going to develop that a lot more later, but for now, that's that. So I'll go the really dark version of that same color. This is just blue and brown mixed together. Gives you almost a black when you do that. Ultramarine blue, brown. It's got a little bit of the gesso in it. But I think I want to take some areas of this and pull down a little bit of a bank. I'm just sketching right now. At this point, you can do yours however you want it to look. You know, you really can look at it and see what it needs. And you develop that more over time. I mean, but it's a good thing to be able to look at the painting and see what it really needs. Yeah, just let that kind of be a bank that kind of pulls down. Right? Some of the same on this side. That flat brush is really going to help me with those angles. Okay. Okay, just got a general idea now of where those banks are. They're kind of sketched in. Right? All right. Now I want to look far off in the distance there. I don't want to have, way back here, I don't want to have too much going on right there because I'm going to put a couple of deer in here. Just silhouettes of deer that are going to be way off in the distance. So I want to make sure that there's some lighter stuff behind them so they show up good. And so some of this is covering up some of what I did. That's okay. But I want to make sure that I don't get too much dark behind them. You know, they got to be able to show up. They're going to be right in here. Okay. Mostly just going to use water, kind of push around that paint I just put down and this down in the creek bed. Yeah, let that, make sure that kind of flows down. So they'll be way back there. I'll do some more detail to that later, but okay. Good, nice, bright spot in the middle. The last thing I'm going to do is this foreground, this really close tree over here, or trees that are going to be in the foreground. So for now, let's just develop this creek bed a little bit more. Okay, I got that dried, and I got my small flat brush, this 1/4 inch flat brush, and some dark, I'm going to call it almost black. If anything, it's a little bit more brown. Again, burnt umber and ultramarine blue. If you mix them 50-50, you're going to get the closest thing we're going to use to a black. So I want to use some of that, and it's a little leaning towards the brown side. We come in and just kind of put this under the edge of what's going to be basically a lip of where the grass is on top of the hill and this little bank that comes down. All right, starting on the left side. Same thing on the right, and you'll be able to see it more up here. It's just this really dark shadow underneath where the overhang is from that, what's going to be grasses and things up there. And then every once in a while, just kind of pull it down to create those contours. Okay, and then we're going to put some grass on top of this, so the top of it really don't matter yet. All right. Also, while I'm in that dark color, I want to start putting some rocks. This is going to have a lot of rocks in this creek bed. Starting off in the distance, I think they'll be smaller, you know, and using this flat brush lets you kind of lay them flat where they look like they're laying on the ground. That's what I want. I want them to be, you know, don't want them all uniform necessarily. Don't want any, you know, polka dots. Just want to throw some of these in there. Some are going to be taller than others. Some are going to kind of have a piece that sticks up a little. I don't know, river rocks are pretty round, typically, on top. But the bottoms are going to be kind of buried in this dirt. So just some clusters of rocks that get smaller and smaller and smaller as they go away. Right? Up here there'll be, you know, some pretty large ones. I don't have to think too much about these. Just there's some shapes in there. You don't want to make perfectly round, you know, potatoes sitting in the water. But by using the flat brush, it can kind of give you some sharper edges. And I am keeping the flow of these kind of going down the side here. I don't want to spend too much time on this side because this, like I said, this part's going to be covered up. A lot of it is. Okay. Now what about down this other side? There's some small, you know, small rocks. And it's creating that bowl shape, you know. And as I get down here, be some more, you know, dominant shapes, more recognizable as rocks. Paint here. Don't need to cover the whole thing with rocks. It's still going to have a sort of a sandy bottom. All right, I think that does a little for it. Let me dry that. I'll do a little more detail on those. Okay, with that dry, our light source on this is kind of down the middle. You know, the light peeking through the trees. If anything, I may want to have it come a little more across from the right. So thinking about that, let's put some shadow side on some of these rocks. The little one's not as important, but on the bigger ones, and this is my liner brush I was using for the trees. But just going to touch that left and bottom edge of some of these rocks. And I got a lot of paint on that brush. Let me get some of that off. And this is just, again, that same color, maybe a little thicker paint. Just got to kind of see where your light would hit your rocks. And this is just the shadow side for now. You don't have to do every one. Some of these big clusters of rocks, you just kind of got to make a decision about which one's a rock and which one's what surface belongs to which rock, you know. So light from this way. On these on this side, same kind of thing. The light's kind of coming down the middle, so there would be some light kind of on the top of the rock, but the shadows would definitely be on the bottoms. The shadow side here. Just a little here and there. And now's a good chance to put some little smaller stuff in here. Just want to make sure you keep it horizontal. Keep it flat on the bottom, kind of. This rounder brush just kind of makes that harder to do, but you know, every little bit's going to add some detail. I'm going to darken some of this up too under here, just in spots. The thing about acrylic paint is it's sort of see-through a little bit, but that's a good thing. It lets you go back and do layers, and each time you do a layer, it can get a little darker, and it'll it's a little more forgiving that way because you don't do everything all at once. You don't have to get it right the first try. You can, you know, throw some paint on there and fix it later. Okay. Now I think I'm going to go into that, take my dirty brush with that black in it, put a little bit of that sky in there, and come back here with some gray and kind of indicate that those rocks go all the way back here. It's just a little bit of that. Pushes them further back. The lighter gray ones. Okay. All right, that's shadow side. Now we come back with some of that same color with a lot of gesso in it. It might lean it a little more towards brown. And then hit the top of those rocks. Especially these in this area that I feel like are going to catch a lot of sunlight. Kind of hit the tops of some of them with this lighter color. Yeah. And before, I'm going to work kind of quick because before this dries, and I didn't dry that dark layer yet either. Before it dries, I'm going to use my small flat brush, and in spots on some of these, it's just a clean brush, just kind of tap around on these and kind of create some texture. Not really wanting to blend it smooth, but to help it transition from the light to the dark on some of them. Mostly on some of these right in the middle, right in the foreground. Just going to pull some of that in there. Not all of them. Sometimes you like that stark light to dark contrast. I mean, at the end of the day, they're rocks. You can't mess them up too bad. Unless you make them perfect. The only way to make them look bad is to make them look good. If they're too uniform or too perfect, they'll look bad. Okay, so we got some rocks. Then I'm gonna let that dry, and we go to what's probably going to be the only other brush that I use for this whole painting, and this is another fan brush, but it's a stiff. If you can see that, that's a stiff bristle fan brush. This one's more natural bristle. It's kind of prickly, kind of stiff, and it's an old one too. It's chewed up, it's spread out. That's good. I use this one for grass more than anything. And I'm going to come into that same dark color. I'm not showing you how to mix this color because it's the same color every time. It's just got a little more blue or a little more brown depending on which way I want it to go. This one is going to be dark, almost black. I'm going to put a tiniest amount of yellow in it. So it's going to give me the darkest green that I can make. And I'm just going to come up here and tap right at the top of this ridge. Kind of tap in some grasses there. The darkest grasses. Just a little. Might even put a few spots down here that have a grass or two. Okay. Now that side's kind of far away. It's going to be hard to do that with. But let's do that. I'm going to have a little bit of a kind of a thick undergrowth kind of under these trees anyway. Doesn't really have to be grass. This is just whatever bushes or whatever are growing at the bottom here. Pulling that on out to the edge very gently. Okay. And if I painted my brush was too big and I got a little too much painting over my other part, while it's wet, I can come back and kind of clean some of that off if I want to, so I don't lose my bank. A lot of this side is going to be kind of covered up. Make sure I didn't lose any of this bank over here. Just kind of blend that up. Okay. Then I want to add a little more yellow to that color, so it gives me a lighter green, pretty light green. And then just in spots, just gently kind of tap around on that. That's going to kind of sell the idea that that's grass. Now, don't want too much. And I don't even know if I want any on this side. Maybe just an indication here and there. Get it a little greener. We're getting there. Getting there. Okay, got that completely dry. And I want to show you this next step. Now, this is not really, doesn't have to be. If you don't feel like doing this, you don't have to. But my little rocks far in the distance, they're a little dark for what I like. And I just want to show you how to do this. If you do need to create more depth. You do want to make, I kind of want this to be a little bit smoky, misty in the background. I've made some of my sky, my original blue color. And it's got a good bit of water in it, maybe like 50% water. And this looks crazy, I know, but I want to paint over some of this stuff way in the back. A lot of it, okay? Got a lot of water. Now this is, before this dries, I'm going to take a clean paper towel, just dry paper towel, and kind of use small circles, kind of rub this in. Not really trying to wipe it off, really trying to rub it in, okay? See how that does? See how that pushes those rocks back just a little bit? And you can do layers of this. It's just a thin little glaze of that white. You can do layers, but you got to make sure it's good and dry in between those layers. I don't think I want to do it again. I think that's probably enough for what I want to do. Just wanted to kind of show you that. Sometimes when we do paintings that we want something to be far away, we'll paint all the background stuff first and then wash over the whole canvas with that blue sky white color and wipe it off or rub it in. Makes a good effect. It's a good way to get that smoky, misty effect. So next thing I want to try to focus on is I want to get these trees on this side to where they're finished. And then these on this side as well, this foreground stuff. So I'm going to add a little more detail to those trees, starting with my liner brush. And I'm going to do a light side and a dark side, basically, for both of them. they're kind of see-through right now. So I'm going to start with a darker, little darker shade. Now those are not foreground necessarily, so they're not going to need a whole lot. Just I'm going to put a little dark side on them, especially at the bottom. A little darker in the back of them. Just a little bit of a shadow side on some of those. Now that's going to be covered up mostly, but wash that brush out and kind of smear that paint upward. Kind of blend it a little with the water in the brush. Okay, not a whole lot to it. Just wanted to make them a little more solid, but not the whole thing, just the back side. Same with these. I want to make this a little more solid, mostly at the bottom. Okay. Yeah. Doesn't take much. Now these two on the right, this trunk over here, well, it's really three. I do want this to be pretty solid. Go ahead and solid that up a little bit with the dark. And then we can do a little bit of highlighting to it. I don't want too much highlighting. It's not really important to the painting right there on the far right like that. Just wanted to kind of get rid of some of the transparency on them. Towards the bottom. At the top, I don't mind it. Kind of makes it blend off into the distance. And if you want to add a few limbs, if you feel comfortable doing that, and you want to put a couple of real small, just little things here and there, now's the time to kind of do that. I don't think it needs that much, if any, of that. Especially on that left side. All right, I think I'm gonna let that, well, let me come back with the highlight color first. I'm just gonna go back with what I was using on the ground. So it doesn't really matter what the color as much as it does just the value. Put a little bit of highlight on some of these bigger trees. To do that, I'm just going to touch down the left side, the light side just a little bit, to put the paint on. Then we'll get my little flat brush, dry it off, clean it off, and just use it to kind of tap this paint around. Just pushing it up to the edge. Yeah, that's probably good. Doesn't need much. Just a little here and there. This tree's kind of in shadow anyway, so it doesn't need a whole lot of highlighting. Okay. Next, I think I'm ready to put my deer in there. There. Now that was easy. Got some deer in there. Now, this is just a silhouette that I printed, and I'll make this available on the. If you look in the description on this video, I'll make this file available for that silhouette. But I've got a little piece of transfer paper. I've cut it to just a little piece, and this you can get this at the craft store, and it's just it's got a shiny side and a rough side. You want to make sure you do the shiny side to the canvas. It's going to slide that under there, and it's going to let me just kind of draw over that with a pencil, and it'll show up behind there. But I'm going to do that, and you could sketch it, you could just paint it. Normally I might just paint it without even just look at it because they're so small. You're probably not going to get all the details of all the antlers in there, but I said this was going to be an easy painting. This is an easy way to do it. If you're intimidated by drawing, you can use this transfer paper. It fell out. And you can sketch that with the transfer paper very simply. Now I'm going to take this over to the table and do it because it's much easier that way. And I'll be right back. Okay, I've got them very roughly sketched in. And now I'm going to use this tiny little liner brush. This thing is just a few hairs. And I'm just going to paint these solid to the best of my ability. Going to use more or less black. I'm going to make the black out of the blue and the brown so that I don't get a solid black. But I may add a little white to it because I want to get it about the same darkness, maybe a little darker as these rocks off in the distance because it's that distant as well. If I get it too dark, I can put a little mist over it like I did before. And that may be what I'll do. But I don't need to worry about every little tiny detail. They're so small. You're not going to see all that detail. You just need to, you know, when you see it, your brain needs to tell you it's a deer. It doesn't have to have every little antler in place. So I'm going to take that to the table and do it because I think it'll be a little easier. And I'll use this little brush. Again, though, these deer, these are completely optional. If you want to paint this painting without these two deer, or you'd rather put a black bear back there, some cubs, some raccoons, whatever. Leave it, whatever you got. Completely optional. If it didn't have the deer, this would still be a good painting. But I'm going to do that and be right back. All right, you got these little deer in here in gray. The only thing I did extra was I did that back leg just a little darker and then put a tiniest little bit of lighter gray on the top of the back and just kind of smeared it with my finger to get a little bit of a light and dark to make it not quite so flat. Optional, again. They'll look weird if they're completely solid black and they're floating. Other thing I did was kind of smear the bottom edge of where the feet are on the land just a little bit. Just kind of push that around with my finger to make them look like they're standing on the land there instead of floating. So anyway, again, completely optional deer. But those are done. All we got left to do now is to get this foreground piece in. And for that, I think I'm going to start with my fan brush again. My soft fan brush that I did all of the trees with before. And I'm going to make a really dark green. I'm going to start with a black, which is blue and brown. And a touch of yellow in it. Kind of like what we had on the other side. Okay. And I'm going to get a little bit more yellow. I think I want it to be a little more green. But it's going to take a few layers of this. Actually, for the first layer, I think I want to go darker. We'll make two different colors here. So the first one, pretty much just black with a little bitty amount of yellow in it. And then for the second layer, it's going to have a little more yellow in it. So this is my color. That's pretty dark. All right, and I'm not going to put too much water in it for this first part. I want to cover up this really light area where I don't have anything behind there. I don't care if I have a few holes showing through, but I really just want to cover, get it nice and dark on that side, all the way down. Okay. I'm not really worried about the limbs yet. I'm just kind of going to soften that edge so it'll be easy to cover up. This is just a blocked in segment of paint here. And I want this section to come all the way down in front of everything. A little more paint. I didn't quite make enough. Yeah, it's okay if it's even darker here at the bottom. Let that be all the way down here. So this is going to be pretty dominant right here in the foreground of everything. Okay. I want to dry that really quick, and then we'll put the real stuff on it. Okay, with that dry, I'm going to come back with a much lighter green. We'll start up here and kind of give a little character. This tree is the closest of all of the trees, so it's going to get a little more attention. But it's not an individual tree, it's still a cluster of trees. But I want to kind of lay these highlights on the top of where the light would be landing, you know. So if I see what looks like a limb, this just very top of it will have this highlight. So leaving a lot of that dark showing through is important. Okay. As I come up, same thing, I'm just going to leave the dark showing. Out here, I think I want to have a few limbs that come out a little further. Okay. Just some while I'm in that same color. Some of this brush down here at the bottom, this is not necessarily the same trees. It's more like bushes, whatever, grasses, whatever's down here. Highlight area. There's the first layer. I'm going to dry that real quick, and then we'll do an even lighter layer. All right, same color with a lot more yellow in it. And now this paint has some water in it too, so it's going to be a little more see-through. So even though it looks really light on the brush, when I put it up on the canvas, it's not going to be, especially when it dries, it's not going to be as bright as what it looks. We'll come out here with some of that. Again, this is just the tops of the branches. Okay. Yeah, at no point am I painting individual leaves. This is tap, tap, tap with the fan brush. It's easy, easy stuff. Not going to go too far over to the edge. I want that to stay dark. But at the bottom, I do want to have some of this peeking through here, some of this little bushes here in areas. Okay. All right, now then we'll switch back to my my grass brush, my other stiff fan brush. And just with just water in it, I can come and push some of that around and make it look more like grass. Grassy, moss, whatever that is down there. But you don't have to know exactly what it is. All right. That gives a little splash of color in the foreground. But it keeps our distant, misty blue intact, which is important. All right, I got that dry. And with my darkest dark that I can make, and I got my 1/2 inch flat brush. Got to make a bold move here. And I want to put some bigger trees kind of right in here. I want a big tree trunk right there. All right, and I want it to be a little bigger at the bottom, all the way off the top of the canvas there. It's going to take a few coats to make this solid, but we're going to make it look good. I'm going to fan it out at the bottom where it attaches to the ground, and we'll put some grasses and things in front of it. There's one, and let's give him a buddy right here, a little thinner. Let's just bring that kind of behind there. I don't want to attach these. I want this one to be kind of behind that one. But we'll figure that out with the highlight and the detail. Okay, just got to be bold, throw those in there. I'm going to dry that and do another coat of it. Second coat, same thing, really dark. I want these things to be pretty dark. Now I don't have to get all the way to the edge on this second coat. I really just want the middle to be solid, so just like that. We're going to do a lot of layers of highlight and shadow on here. This one in the back. Just another coat on it. Again, you're going to kind of bring that down at the bottom where the roots would be. We'll cover all that up, but if it's there, it'll look, it'll look better when it's covered up. All right, that's pretty solid. I'm going to dry that. Okay, that's dry now. And so before I move on to painting the details of this trunk, I want to make sure everything behind there is done. So I got a little bit lighter highlight yellow, and I'm not worried about painting on this tree. I'm going to wipe that off in a second, but I want to get those really bright limbs right here in the middle. Throw those in, and I'm going to have them continue back behind the trees here a little bit in spots. And then some of this. And then you'd say, why didn't you do that before you painted these trees in? Because I didn't know exactly where I wanted the tree to be. And by doing this way, I can see where I need those highlights, because I want them to be stark against the back of that, with that dark tree in the foreground. So real quickly, once that's there, I can take a clean wet brush and just kind of wipe that off. Kind of wet it. Paper towel. We'll just wipe it right off of that tree trunk. And that lets me leave what's behind there. I can be pretty precise with the brush to clean just the edge of the tree. Right? We're going to do a lot more to this tree trunk, so it's not hurting anything. But that lets the stuff behind it kind of look right. We're going to have some limbs and things in front of it too, but not yet. Okay. Good. All right, now we got to put some bark, some texture, some stuff like that on this tree. And it's dry, other than where I just wet it to wipe it off. There's no wet paint on it anyway. The stuff in the background might be. Let me go ahead and hit that with a dryer. Okay, and I'm gonna start with the shadow side since I've already got that black made up. I'm gonna start with that. And I just want to clean up this back edge. Doesn't have to be a straight line, just needs to be a solid, hard line against the background. Just using some brush strokes to give a little hint of texture there. I'll do that on that one too, although it's pretty clean. That back one is not as important. But I do want to make sure that it doesn't get smaller as it comes down, if it needs to come this way a little. Okay. And that tree is in front of it. Okay, I got my darks in. I'll dry that. Okay, here comes the fun part. I've got some gray, brownish gray, that I'm going to use. I've got my little flat brush here. All right, let's take, on the highlight side, it's going to be the right side on this tree. I'm just going to put some of this paint, just kind of dab it on there, using that flat brush, little flat brush, just kind of put some here and there. Yeah, I probably shouldn't have done that big of a section, but I'm going to work pretty quick though. About halfway across the tree. All right, then I'm going to use my finger. Just going to take some water, get my finger really wet, and just kind of tap around on that paint. A lot of water. Get a puddle of water on there and just kind of push it around. And I'm trying to kind of use the texture of the canvas. Right? Just tap, 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 a lot of water, and just use the texture of the canvas. And I only want to come over about halfway, maybe 3/4 of the way on this first layer. But we're going to do a lot of layers of this. Okay, down a little further, a little more paint, watery paint. It's going to dry a lot lighter than what it is. I mean, a lot, not lighter, but a lot less intense is what I mean than what it is. A lot of water. And when you have a lot of water, it's going to make it more see-through, so it will dry. It'll look a lot less intense when it dries. Just kind of do an up and down motion, scrubbing it into the canvas. and a tap. The tap gives you that little puddled texture. Okay, that's just layer one. If you'd rather don't like using your fingers, you could use a clean brush and kind of come over it with just barely touching it and do a little texturing that way. This is just going to be layers of texture. And as this dries, it's going to almost disappear. I'm going to put a little bit on this back tree here. Right, just on that sun side. All right, just use a clean wet brush, kind of push that around a little. These first couple layers don't have to have a whole lot of, detail to them. And I'm going to blow dry that real quick. All right, second layer, put a little more white in the gesso. It's not anywhere near pure white. It looks really bright on here because it's a dark background, but that's just got more white in it, but it's not completely white by any means. Just going to throw some on here. Kind of going to create that front edge, but you got to go quickly with this, especially if you're going to do the whole tree like I just did. All right, back to finger paint. The faster you do this, the less you think about it, the better. All right. Same thing on the other side. I keep throwing my brush in here. Me too. Same thing on this back tree, just a little. I don't want to do too much, and I'll probably have to use the brush for it because it's kind of small. Can't really get my hand in there. The key is thin, watery paint. And let the canvas texture give you some textures there. All right, once again, I'm gonna blow dry. All right, this time it's gonna be a little lighter even. You see how much, when it's dry, how much texture of the canvas just gives you? I mean, you got some character in here. I didn't put any of that in there intentionally. It's just, it gives you some, it looks like a tree. It shapes it up for you, does a lot of the work for you. Now this layer is gonna be even more focused on just kind of this part of the tree, and even more just out to the edge. I don't want to go as far in on this one as I did previously. And I don't know if I want to put much at all on that back tree. Okay, and same as before. I'm going to just use my wet finger. Try to pull that away from the edge a little bit. Okay, just going to tap. If I get over the edge, that's okay. I can come back with before it dries, I can come back and clean it up. Just like that. I did want that to be pretty light out on that edge. And this, this technique, you just kind of got to do it a little bit, do it a few times. It may not work as well the very first time you do it, but if you try it a few times, you'll see, you start learning kind of what it needs, what it feels like. You got to really trust the brush. Let it do the work. Let the canvas and the brush and the water do the work for you. if you overwork it, it's not going to look right. That's what most beginners struggle with, is trying to make it perfect. Trying perfect is not good in nature. Perfect looks weird. All right, I'm gonna just a couple more little spots here on the edge, and now I'm going to go to the point where it's too light, because I want to colorize it. Now this step, I'm going to put some tiny little spots on here, and my finger is still kind of wet. I'm just going to tap those around. There's not quite as much water as before. I want to kind of pick that paint up and push it around. Let it stick to my finger a little bit and move it. Okay, and this edge, I really got to clean that hard edge up just a little bit. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's probably good. Go ahead and get some more light in this bend. Yeah, okay. I want to dry that now completely. Okay, now that that's really, really dry, and I'm stressing that, you got to make sure it's really dry before you try this. I've got some brown burnt umber paint. I put just a touch of blue in it and just a touch of yellow in it too, but it's really mostly water. It's probably 80% water. This is about like coffee. Okay, and then what I want to do is just color this tree. Those highlights were too light on purpose, but now I want to come down here and just put a coat of this really thin glaze over the top of it, and look how it just colors that tree. That's pretty cool. All the way, all the light, all the dark, everything. I'm going to go ahead and do this back one too. And I'm putting the paint on really thin, and then just kind of pulling it off as much as I can with the brush. Just want a thin layer of that paint on there. I'll make sure I got it good and dark right there between those two. My dark side. See how that worked? And if it's not brown enough, you can do another coat once it's dry. If you want to, color it a little more. But I think I like that just like that. Now that texture method on the tree will work on rocks. It'll work on a couple different things. You can add that. Yeah, I don't want to get too carried away here, but if we wanted to put a little of that light color on the rock and tap it around with your finger, it'll do the same kind of thing. It'll give you some texture that you didn't really have to work hard for. I don't want to do too much of that down here. While I'm in that glaze though, that brown, for the sake of adding some more color on this side of the painting, I might glaze in some of this area here. Just add a little bit of that brown there in the bank. If I wanted to get real crazy, and I'm not sure I do, could even do a little bit on these deer back here. Just a hint. I don't want to get it on my background too much, but just a little. All right, they are brown. They're just off in the distance. Okay, not a whole lot of that, but adding some color, adding some more of that brown over on this side definitely will help balance the painting out a little bit more. Kind of solid up this area at the bottom. Let me go ahead and just put some more paint on the bottom there, just now that I have Now that I see where everything's at, I think I'll make a little bit of tan for the bottom. That's just going to be brown, white, tiny amount of yellow, just to kind of make this ground a little more solid down here in spots. I do want it to stay blue off in the distance there. Okay. Go a little darker even under here. Yeah. I think we'll get the bottom of those rocks. They can kind of look like they're floating a little bit. We'll kind of tie them down a little bit here. Never a bad idea to have the foreground be a little darker than what the rest of the painting is. Okay. Not too much of that. Not too worried about this part right in here too much. Okay. Last is I got to put some grasses and some more stuff in the front of this tree. For that, I'm going to start dark. I'm going to start with a almost black, touch of yellow in it. See what that looks like. That might be too blue. That's pretty good. It's got some blue in it, but I have to tone it down with a little bit of brown. And with this grass stroke, okay, this is my grass brush, my stiff bristle. You can flick it upward. You can kind of start there and flick upward. I find it easier if you're doing a lot of grass to just kind of do a downward tap and let the bristles, the tip of the bristles hit first and the base of the brush hit second, like that. It kind of gives you those grass tops. And I want this really dark down here at the bottom. So I'm going to come on down with that. Okay. Make sure I get on my, cover my edge of my canvas so we're good. All right. Just for the sake of balance, we'll do some of this dark over here as well. All right. Now, I'm going to dry that. All right, and with that dry, some lighter green on top of it. And I don't want to cover up all of my dark. Throw some of this light on top. Yeah. And then water. Rinse that brush out. Straight water. And that's going to let it kind of blend down into the dark. Okay. I'm going to put a little more up the tree here. Not on the back side because that's a shadow. But definitely on the foreground here. All right, going to dry it. Now using a small liner brush, I want to pull some individual grasses up through here. Some of those highlighted grasses. When I do those, I usually do kind of quick circles and let the brush touch just on the top left of the circle. And just fast. You got to get a lot of water in the brush. This brush holds a lot of paint because it's got long bristles. If you try to do this with short bristles, it won't work. These are like 1 inch long bristles, and you just kind of go quick. Throw a bunch of these in there until the paint runs out. Right? And then I'm going to take my finger and just kind of tap around on the bottom of them to kind of let them blend in with the rest of the grass. And I'll come back here. I want to have some of them in front of the tree here, but some down here in the where the shadows are starting, coming out of the shadow, that kind of helps sell that shadow a little bit. Okay. get up in front of that dark rock there. That'll give us some contrast. And then just like you do most things, when you do a light, you also do a dark. We come back with a almost black. Again, a lot of water. Same kind of thing. Just kind of throw some of these in there. Against the lighter tree, it'll almost look like shadows, you know. It's, you know, darker grass or shadows, whatever it is. But you usually do a little light, then a little dark, then maybe even a little more light. You're doing stuff like this. While I'm in that, if I want, I can, you know, I don't want to get too carried away, but I could pull out a couple little twigs, you know, some sticks and things growing up through here if I want to. Just detail stuff. Can come back with an even lighter highlight, a little bit of yellow, a little bit of white, and do just a few that are, you know, really bright. Yeah, don't want to do too much of this, but and when you're painting a bunch of just thick grasses, there's always little spots in it too, little, you know, just the tops of the grasses or whatever they are. May even be flowers. You can go with some grayer looking stuff in the shadows. Little stuff like this in the foreground can make a big difference. I like that one too much. See what that's gonna do. Just tiny little stuff. I'm going to save a spot down here to put my signature. I think I want to put it on that side. I don't know. Might work better over here. That's pretty much it. Now you want to take a minute to look, see what else, you know, might be needed. What kind of extra little details you can do. Usually foreground stuff is usually the last thing you want to do. Is just kind of look at it and see what might be needed in the foreground. Put some of these highlights on here real quick. I don't think I want to do too much more to that. I think that's probably about it. Maybe some of this lighter color here too. Okay. I think that's pretty much it. This was like I said, a beginner painting. There was no sketch. There's nothing to it. Those little deer, trace those in. Completely cheated with those. But all technique. It's all something you can do on day one, and you do get better at it with time, with practice, all these techniques. But the finger painting on the trees, the fan brush trees, very few brushes, very few colors. This whole thing was still just those 3 colors plus gesso. I encourage you to try this. Try something similar to it. Doesn't have to be exactly like this. I will put those deer in the description, the pictures, if you want to use that. And again, I appreciate you watching. Like and subscribe if you haven't already. And there will be more to come. I appreciate it.